Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and go over the week's events in the world of Scientology as reported by Tony on his Substack. Hey, Tony, welcome back.
Chris, the really weird thing here is that the people watching this video know who won the Super Bowl, but we're recording it right before the Super Bowl, so we don't know. So nobody tell us.
Nope, nope, that's right. No spoilers. But we do have some Super Bowl stuff coming up. But starting with this week, some interesting stuff this week and a little bit blast from the past on this one. To start with Joy Villa, one of my least favorite, most favorite. Wow, this woman. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody that I would, who has been so desperate for attention.
Yeah.
What was the latest from her?
Yeah, we go way back. We first noticed her showing up in Scientology publications. I think it was around 2013 or 2014. So more than a decade ago. And
Yeah.
she was Princess Joy Villa. And it was just obvious she was desperate to become a Scientology celebrity some way or another. It wasn't real clear how, what her talent was supposed to be. Uh, I mean, for a while there, she was trying to make news as a vegan bodybuilder. And another time she was doing waist training. I mean, whatever it was to get people, because she didn't have any talent. Turns out she did some singing and that wasn't going anywhere. Um, and and apparently had come from a sort of lefty background, but the fateful connection she made was with this. I think he's Filipino dress designer who, starting in like 2015, I think, started. The two of them started showing up at the Grammys wearing these just crazy looking outfits. One of them looked like she just crashed through a orange fence at a ski lodge. Then something else was just like almost nothing there. But then after Trump was elected for the first time in 2016, and then he took office in January 20th, 2017, the Grammys happens like the first weekend in February. So it was just a few days after Trump had become president for the first time that she showed up in this MAGA dress. And it was just an overnight sensation because there's so few at that time. There were so few artists who would openly support Trump. So so her records suddenly sold. Just because she was a celebrity, that didn't make them any good. But she really leveraged that for a while. If you remember, Chris, she actually got into the White House. And I mean, she made contact. She was hanging out with Roger Stone. She even considered running for Congress at one point.
Yep.
But we weren't the only ones pointing out that, hey, listen, her loyalties to Scientology. She's clear. She and her at that time she was married to a Scientologist photographer, and they were patron meritorious together. That means they donated $250,000 to the IAS. So there's no question. And I actually interviewed her man. She had a manager for a while who complained that he was trying to give her this sort of right wing MAGA success, but her real loyalty was to Scientology. So, she sort of disappeared after Biden got into office, and to the point where in 2022 we found pictures of her where she was working a Dianetics table in Brighton. Right. So, I mean, she's basically got involved with Scientology in Los Angeles, but here she is in England working a Dianetics table down by the shore. And, people have told me they think what it might have been. Basically, the thing I hear the most is that maybe she was doing an amends project at that time. Right.
That's what comes to my mind as well.
Right, so she's being punished in some way,
Yeah.
and what an ignominy! I mean, just like she's become so, from the heights, she's sort of an anonymous person in England. Okay, that was 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So now Trump is back in office. The inauguration was January 20th of this year. The Grammy Awards is like the next weekend, first weekend in February. She reemerges. She comes back for the first time to the Grammys in 4 years. And this time, I don't know, this dress, it was hard to interpret. It looked like she was basically just trying to represent cyber currency, and she was a Dogecoin, basically. I guess she was trying to get Elon Musk's attention this time. But, it worked. She got interviewed by the Hollywood Reporter. She got on a lot of different news things. So she got the publicity she wanted. But, again, the same issue is her loyalty is going to be to Scientology. But she's got what she wanted, Chris. She got herself noticed again.
Yeah, exactly. She's really something. And unfortunately you're right that there's really nothing else to fall back on for her other than look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's her thing. I guess in an attention economy, you can become rich on that. And that's what she's trying to do. Interesting that 10 years, 11 years later, she's playing the greatest hits, trying to get back on the line with this administration after the ham-fisted nonsense that went on last time. I remember you posted a whole thing on how Scientology had been directing her, but then telling her to do things that were completely counter to what the political consultant was saying, and they really displayed their lack of savviness, you could say, the political savvy when it comes to navigating this world, which is good news for us.
Well, I remember back in 2017, 2018, she actually got to the White House and performed the national anthem, which is like, oh God, don't listen to it. But she was, we hanging out with people like Steve Bannon and Roger Stone. And I remember people asking me, does this represent influence of Scientology on the White House? And because at that point, that was the big thing, was Joy Villa is playing footsie with the Trump administration. Well, 8 years later, Joy Villa, I mean, you got Trish Duggan is one of Trump's biggest personal donors. Grant Cardone got to speak at the Madison Square Garden rally.
Right.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been hanging out with these Scientologist attorneys for years. I mean, Joy Villa is the least of it. So
exactly.
I think she's just a fun sideshow. And I know of my readers, there's kind of a thing where people dismiss her, but people also kind of fascinated. So we'll see what she makes of it.
Exactly. She's just endlessly interesting. Okay. Now, Narconon. This is a nearly dead subject for Scientology, and yet some effort to maybe pump some life back in.
Well, they'll never give up, Chris. The big change was that 30 years ago, David Miscavige really did sort of have a thought that they could make a push with these large clinics like in Oklahoma, and really, give the impression that this was making a dent in the American drug problem, and that they were going to really have these large facilities with hundreds of beds. That all fell apart. You had patient deaths, you had dozens of lawsuits. So they really scaled things back. And one of the ways that they refocused was on smaller boutique clinics aimed at VIPs. Now, why would you do that? Well, okay, so you can no longer make the case that you're actually doing something about America's drug problem. But if you help a few wealthy people get through a drug addiction, then guess what? They might become big donors, right? So that's that new focus. So the one way that they have tried to manifest that was they purchased Larry Hagman's old estate up in Ojai, California, a really, really lovely town up the coast from Los Angeles. And what I noticed this week was they actually had a couple celebrities visit. Now, see, that's I don't think we've seen that in quite a while.
Yeah.
Kirstie Alley used to speak up for Narconon regularly 20, 30 years ago, but it's been much rarer lately for celebrities to get involved with promoting Narconon drug rehabs. Well, this was interesting. The executive director of the Ojai rehab posted a photograph of himself with two Scientology celebrities. Now, they're not big names, but they are inside Scientology. People inside Scientology know, for example, that Michelle Stafford is a longtime, very well-known soap opera actress.
Yeah.
She does have a certain following. Maybe the larger population is not super up on who Michelle Stafford is, but that would be impressive to Scientologists that Michelle Stafford visited the Ojai Narconon. But it's the other person that really caught my attention, because the other person in the picture was Steve Barra. He's this skateboarding mogul who not only hung out with Tony Hawk and then became a kind of a big skateboarding figure of his own, then he got into filmmaking. So, and then at one point he was married to Juliette Lewis. They aren't together anymore, but Steve Barra is definitely an interesting name. And I wanted to remind people that we wrote about him 7 years ago, because he's got this tenuous connection to the whole Danny Masterson Jane Doe thing. And so I described that in the story, that Juliet and Steve Barra, when they were together, definitely disconnected from one of the Jane Doe victims because she was going to the LAPD about Danny Masterson. So an interesting sort of connection to all of that. And you don't see this guy promoting Scientology too much. So it was interesting to see that he showed up at a Narconon of all places to do a little promotion. I always try to keep an eye on those kind of things, Chris. Slight changes in the way they promote things. And I just think it was interesting to see two celebrities promoting that rehab.
Absolutely. And I think, as we've sort of thrown out a little bit recently, that this is a preview of things to come for Scientology as a whole, right? That as they focus more and more on the uber rich, that concept of boutique service delivery, right, becomes more of a thing for them as the years are going to move forward, and they're going to get smaller and smaller. So we'll see how this all plays out. Of course, we're just sort of, predicting, thinking right now, but Narconon would be a pretty thing to look at, because they did go big, and they bombed horribly, right, with Shalako, and then with that Arrowhead thing, where they tried to do this greatest, biggest live-in drug rehab in the world. We're going to be at the top of the game, we're jumping to the first in the line, and they bombed so badly because their drug rehab not only doesn't work, it's actively destructive to your body, and people have even died from this. So so now it's the exact opposite, pull in all those flippers. Now this brought me some joy, and this was the Minkoff flop on the Real Housewives, the response to this.
So Rebeca Minkhoff, we've known this is a story. I think everybody's been kind of following it for months now. Is that Bravo's series Real Housewives of New York City was starting up their 15th season, and the way the show works is they have several women who are regular cast members, the housewives, and then they'll bring in one or two other people that they call friends of the cast. And the whole idea is that just you're looking for some spark, somebody that's going to cause controversy, get people talking. It's essentially a show that has wealthy women picking little fights with each other, and it's entertainment for people.
Yeah.
So this time, Rebeca Minkhoff was coming in as the friend. And right away, I mean, everybody knew this is going to be interesting because she's a well-known Scientologist. And so there's been coverage of it throughout the season. Well, this last week was when they had the final show. They tape it, and then several months go by, they air it, and then they bring everybody back for a reunion show at the very, very end. And that's what this was. And they brought her out, and I finally got a chance to watch it. And oh, Chris, I mean, these other women just did not like her. And again, I'm pointing out the whole point is to get crosswise with each other and get little fights. But man, they did not like this woman. And a part of it was that she just would not address the questions about Scientology, or that she just shut people down. And she did it right there in front of everybody. Andy Cohen is like, we've got viewers writing in and saying, how did she think she was going to be able to go on a reality show and not talk about this? Because I mean, the point of these shows is they're very confessional. You're going to get to the deepest, darkest secrets, and she didn't go anywhere near it. And she just did the classic Scientology celebrity thing about that this is bigotry. Yes, I'll talk about Scientology, but I have to be comfortable, and then just never ever giving up any kind of a detail. And I have said that I was a little disappointed that nobody on the show at least asked her about the fact that she and her father have donated $5 million. That's a lot of money. That her father has twice been ensnared in litigation about patient deaths, Scientologist deaths. Uh, the fact that Rebecca herself was fronting for this sneaky front group in New York that was infiltrating New York City schools. None of this stuff even got asked. But I didn't expect the cast to be very savvy about any of that. However, what I did talk about this week was I have been pleasantly surprised by how good the press coverage has been. When this whole thing started last August or something, I said I don't know if the press is going to ask these questions, but they did, and so I was pointing out that Claudia Smith at the Daily Mail, for example, did a particularly good piece where she brought up all the past things about Rebecca Minkhoff and her dad, and I thought that was great. So, not only was the press paying attention and did not give Rebecca Minkhoff a break, but it was so clear that things were so icy for her on that show. And like the day after it aired, she announced on Instagram she's not coming back. So, and she had admitted that her motivation for doing all this was that her handbag brand has been in the toilet since the pandemic, and she was just trying to get some publicity. Now that may have paid off for her. She's said something about how this is paying off for her handbag brand, but boy, it didn't pay off for Scientology, did it, Chris?
Not at all. And this is pretty classic for these guys, Scientologists, and there's some other cults out there that pull this crap too. And this is where they try to, it's almost like it's almost a version of stolen valor in a way, is how I'm going to present this, right? It's a little bit of like they're trying to take the credibility of major religions on this planet that have suffered some pretty serious shellackings in terms of persecution, right? I mean, people have been killed for being Christians, for being Islamic, for being Judaic. Nobody's killed because they're Scientologists. That's not what's happening. Nobody's prosecuting or persecuting Scientologists, right? And Scientologists are such a tiny little fringe group that these little pipsqueak, oh, it's just bigotry. You're just not. It just rings false to everybody outside Scientology. And if Osa, you're watching this, I mean, like, really get a clue, right? You guys, like, there's an old, and here's the funny thing for me is, as an old school Scientologist, right? One of the old school policies of Scientology is answer people's questions. Hubbard laid it out very clearly in the 50s and 60s. Answer people's questions, because you're never going to get anywhere if you don't give them something. And she doesn't even try to give them
Well,
something.
and that's one way that Scientology gets sold to Scientologists. If you do the technology, you're going to be able to talk to anybody about anything.
Exactly.
And that's what the PTSP course is about, right? You're going to be able to shatter suppression. You're going to be able to handle anything from the SPs. And then what happens as soon as somebody asks even the most, basic question? Oh, they just shut down entirely.
That's
Get a
right.
book. Buy a book. It was good for me. Buy a book.
Exactly. There's no answer there at all. And this is a Miscavige thing, because Hubbard had a very different approach to the PR of Scientology. Again, not saying that Hubbard was some past master or genius at this, but he wasn't as ham-fisted about it as they are now. And it's just so funny to see how they've just pulled in their shell. They're just, the flippers are completely in the turtle shell. They're just not going to talk about it. And it's just going to continue to cause them to shrink. So Scientology, keep going. Good job. All right. And finally, we have the big event for today, at least in some markets, will be the Scientology Superbowl ad. What do we see and know about for this year?
Yeah, so the last several years they've revealed the new ad right at midnight as Super Sunday was starting. Last night for some reason they made me wait till 3 a.m. So I was up late.
Uh,
But they did finally put it out, and so I made sure I had it for my readers this morning first thing. Um, there's a slight difference this time. This is the 13th year that they've done this.
hmm,
And most of the time, it's a combination of two things: stock footage and narration by Shane Johnson. right? So they have footage from the International Space Station. They have footage of young people doing extreme sports, and then they have this Shane Johnson. Have you ever wondered about yourself? And that's supposed to produce enough of a feeling of curiosity that you want to check out more. It's a mystery sandwich. They never actually tell you anything about Scientology. Now this time it is Shane Johnson. It is the same voice. However, they said this at Freedom Magazine yesterday on the website. They said this one's different because we shot everything. So they're admitting that they were using stock footage before. This time they really shot everything, and you can kind of tell because. So, for example, they're talking about what is the question, right? They never say what the question is, but it's obviously what's the meaning of life or whatever. And so they have this sequence where they're talking about people have fought over the question or whatever, and they show you scenes from different historical battles, something from like the Revolutionary War, something like that. And it was funny to me because as soon as I saw that, Chris, I thought this has got like the stamp of L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, it's badly shot, it's strangely shot. It's like this. Yeah, you can tell they shot it because it's got some L. Ron Hubbard touches to it. But I mean, in all, it is a slick, expensive, good-looking thing. And once again, it's just the mystery sandwich. It's like the secret of the universe is in you, and we'll help you get it out. And I expect it's going to have the same thing every year. There's going to be all these people that are totally shocked to see a Scientology ad on their TV. They'll be crazy. They'll be going crazy. They'll be outraged. Every year it's the same. And again, I want to remind people, this is not a national ad. The national advertisers pay $8 million for a 30-second ad. Those ads have been locked in for weeks. You don't have to wait till the Super Bowl. For weeks, they've been on a website where you can go see all of the Super Bowl ads before they air. That's not what Scientology does. Okay, Scientology, what they do is in that 3-hour football game broadcast, there's a few spots that are reserved for the local carrier, the local station, to sell to a local advertiser. So what Dave does is he buys those in a few markets. So the Scientology ad will show up in like L.A., New York, Tampa, and Chicago or something, and maybe one or two others. The other parts of the country won't see it at all, and that's just a lot less expensive than paying for those national ads. The other thing to keep in mind is the 90-second ad that I posted this morning that they put on YouTube is one thing, but what they'll show during the show is not only 30 seconds. I've seen them air like a 15-second version, so
Mm,
it's a really really short. If you and of course you're not putting this out till Monday, but I always look for it at the commercial break after halftime, right before the third quarter. There's a local ad spot in there. Slot there, and it tends to show up there. But we'll see. By the time you put out this video, we'll see all the reactions from people, different parts of the country, and as usual, people will be outraged. They can't believe Scientology is doing this, but this is their 13th year. You'd think they'd be used to it by now.
you're right, exactly. And I'll just add in, as I always do, that that this is really the bare minimum of what Miscavige gets away with on this, right? It's in the local markets where the church's ideal orgs are located, where their bigger population centers are for Scientologists, which is going to be Bay Area, Los Angeles, Portland of all places, obviously Florida, and maybe some other hot spots, maybe New York, something like that. We'll see where they end up landing, but generally speaking, they put them in places where they know Scientologists will see them. Seems counterintuitive.
And that's no, but see, you're right. That's the important point is they really aren't trying to recruit new people. These ads do not work bringing in a lot of new people. These ads are to convince the big donors that their money is being spent well. So
That's
that the
right.
big donor sees that and like, whoa, we've got a Super Bowl ad. Scientology's kicking butt. And so then you'll give another big check. That's the real point.
That's right. That's it. And that really is the only sensible explanation for how and why they promote the way they do, because we know they have access to far more money than they spend. Miscavige is just tight with those purse strings, Scrooge like, with those things. And if he really wanted to grow Scientology, of course, it would be the exact opposite of that. So All right. So Tony, thank you very much for all of that breakdown for this week. Do we have any sort of previews of what's coming up this next week?
I have no idea, man. We'll see.
All right, we'll see what comes up then. All right, exciting times, folks. Stay tuned. Now you can see right there on the screen Tony's Substack address, and you should go to that, and you should subscribe, and you should get your daily notifications, and then check back in with us on Mondays for this wrap up. And we will see you guys next week. Bye bye.